Hello guys and welcome back to Spoken Essays. I am Harshal Vara and you are watching the front-end libraries development front-end development libraries and how we learn them. So let us continue from where we left off. Okay, without wasting more time. Right. Okay, so this is my screen. Again, it's stuck the moment I hover my mouse over the screen. Nothing is visible. Okay, now it will be. Very good. Okay. Right. So let's look at this. Let's see what this says. Right, a simple counter. And I can see that, just a second, we have 3 viewers watching. Amazing. 3 viewers. That is amazing viewership today. Very lucky, I must say, or maybe just today is more energetic. Right. You can design a more complex stateful component. I think we read something like this, but I know what we are supposed to do. I read this and I understood that we are supposed to increment, decrement, reset. So this will stay 0. When we reset it the count itself becomes 0. Kind of obvious, but let's read what they're trying to say. You can design a more complex stateful component by combining the concepts covered so far. These include initializing state, writing methods that set state, and assigning click handlers to trigger these methods. It's quite simple, quite understandable. Right, so the counter component, that means this component. Remember guys, every class is a called a component. Now they can be stateless or stateful. That depends based on whether we have defined the constructor class or not, and a few more things. For example, this dot state. Okay, the counter component keeps track of a count value in state. Yeah, so you can see here this count component, sorry, count yeah, keeps track. Yeah, the counter keeps track of the count. Right. Quite yeah, that's okay, self-explanatory. Just a second, it is not charging. Right. Yeah, there are two buttons which call methods increment and decrement that we have to write. You can see these two buttons. It doesn't do anything yet, so we have to change that so that we can create a counter. The counter component keeps track of there are two buttons which call methods increment and decrement. It's called this dot increment, and these things will call that function. Basically, you're not calling a function with the parenthesis, but this way actually. Right. Right, these methods, so the counter value is incremented or decremented by 1 when the appropriate button is clicked. Also create a reset method, so when the reset button is clicked, the count is set to 0. It's quite simple, quite obvious. Let's start coding it. I'll also refer to some of my previous projects to use for the code. I see we can't review it, but I can use this syntax for my benefit. Now we are going to call 3 functions. The current count, of course this will yeah, these 3 functions, sorry, called increment, decrement and reset, and they have a class name too. Right. Okay, now we can read the note as well. Make sure you don't modify the class names of the buttons. Also remember to add the necessary bindings for the newly created methods in the constructor. I need a binding as well. Where can we find some binding? I think we'll bind this. I think it should be in here or in here. Yeah, we can reuse you to our benefit. Paste, paste and placed. Why 3? Because we're going to call 3 different functions. You can see, also remember to add the necessary bindings, not binding. So you have to bind all 3 of them. Right, one is increment, that's decrement and reset. Okay, quite increment, decrement, maybe decrement. Let's find out the definition of increment. I see. Okay. These are references. There is some next level stuff. What is that? What am I looking at? That's something called references. Wow. Okay. But I wanted the dictionary definition, not the freeCodeCamp definition.
Increment.
Increment. Yeah, so increment. Can you guys hear that? I think you guys should be able to hear that. Let me see what I can do. Does it also bring in sounds? It should. Increment. If I play this, will it play a sound?
Increment.
Yep. Okay, you guys can hear that sound, right? Increment. Increment. And what's for decrement or decrement? It is
Decrement.
decrement. Decrement. Very good. Okay. So decrement, increment. Also. Right. Wait a minute. Aren't we supposed to bind? No, I don't think we are supposed to bind that. Right. And then we'll of course define these functions. So RESET. Now we start writing the functions so that this type error can go away. First we'll write the increment one. So increment. How do you write the code? Let me look at that. So it says this dot username. No, there is another way. Yeah, but it's a function. So yeah, function calls can be written this way. Now inside this we write, not you, we write, where are you? This thing, all of it, because we're setting the state. Now instead of username Louis, it will become state is we should write, wait, we should also pass a function, shouldn't we? Wait a minute, why did you not pass a function for you? This is one step before. I think there are various ways to set a state. This is the one I was looking for, this dot set state, and then we pass a function, because we are passing a function. Why are we passing a function? Because we're incrementing values. It will be +1, right? Exactly something like this, but instead of counter we make it count. Haha. Paste this. Now instead of counter we make this count, and here count. Very good. So now decrement should work, increment should work. Nothing is visible in the preview yet because we haven't defined decrement and reset. Right. Now I can copy this. For decrement, how are you? Oh, there's no indentation, is there? Let's add some indentation. Very good. I mean, I like this one too. All that function, the entire thing is just stored in a line, so it looks so cool to read. Decrement, and this will be reset. Now, not all of them will do the same thing. I think we should remove the semicolons. Nope, that did no effect. Now instead of this being +1, this will become -1, and this will become 0. How did you write this? Not you. Where is that? Nope. Yeah. This was the last method, right? It says this dot set state and then state and then this and counter and then state counter. State and count. So another way we can write this is state dot count minus state dot count. That's additional, I think. So maybe we can do something else. What does this do? Is there, do you need spaces or what? I think we need those. How did they write this? If they state this one state divisibility. Kya missing semicolon where? After decrement, is it? Why? Why is that correct? Why do you find this correct? Now it says missing semicolon after render. You mean here? I think we were missing a curly brace. No, we're missing something. I don't think. Yeah, when we are defining functions, we don't write it this way anyway. Right. Maybe we should cover this entire. Oh, okay, it is missing a semi. Curly brace missing. Another curly brace is missing here, and this one too. Oh, wait a minute. No. Right. Actually, yes. Not no. Let's think. And before I think, let me paste this in one line. Right. So increment open the function call. And if we call this function, then it would do this dot set state and then state count equals state count plus 1, state dot count plus 1. This one will do plus minus 1, and then we go through reset. Now why is there a red underline here? I think because of missing curly braces, maybe. Where does this end? Right. Where does this end? Right. Where do you end? Very well. Do we need a semicolon maybe? And what is this curly brace for? I see. There was an error because of you, because of an extra curly brace. Right. Or if I make this 0. When I click on decrement, it will go minus, and if I do this, it will 0. It will become 0. Then, right, and reset will make it 0. Done. I did not even need to write state.count minus state.count. Done. 57% complete. Okay. Next, create a controlled input. Your application may have more complex interactions between state and the rendered UI. Okay, may have. For example, form control elements for text input, such as input and text area, maintain their own state in the DOM as the user types. With React, you can move this mutable state into a React component's state. Right, as if I understand what that means. The user's input becomes part of the application state, so React controls the value of that input field. Typically, if you have React components with input field the user can type into, it will be a controlled input form. I'm going to read that again. So your application, whatever application we are building, may have more complex interactions between state and the rendered UI. Definitely. I mean, yeah, maybe it could be a completely different web page maybe a completely different menu. Or if you think about it, I keep thinking of the example for Google Docs, or the example of Google Docs really, because that Docs thing is Google Docs is very it's amazing the way they've achieved something so beautiful. And you can edit documents in real time with multiple users. Like so many people can work on a and work on a document at the same time. It's amazing, and you don't need to press Command S, or Control S to save a file. You just do it. You wait for a few seconds, and it's saved on the internet in your Google Drive. So next level. But coming back, it's the same thing really. You can. It's a it's another what you can think of as a text area. It's literally text area, but I'm sure it's called something else. It cannot be the user input text area. That would be wild. But now that I look at it, I want to explore that before we continue with this. So if I go docs.new, that's the shortcut. If you have Google Chrome in your device, and if you write docs.new, literally docs.new, it will create a new document for you, and that document, that Google document, will be saved in your Google Drive. Right. So let's do that. Let's find out what this thing is. Is it a text box? Is it a text? Is it a button, or what is it? Is it text area? Let's find out. So I'll press Command Alt I or Command Option I. Look at that. There are already errors in the console or some failures. We can ignore those failures for now. I want to select the element. This is one. Now it's a canvas. I've not played with canvases yet, so I don't know what this is, but you can see its width, height is different. It has the Z index 0. It says style equals inside this. Wow, I've never seen the style attribute before. Maybe I have, I don't know. It has width this. You can see element style, Z index, width, height. Then it has kicks canvas style content. Of course, it's Google, so they must have done so much with this thing. How much padding does it have? No padding, no margin, no border, nothing. And yet the text doesn't begin from here. Would you look at that? Oh, yeah, and that's what it looks like on a Samsung Galaxy S8. It might look like. I mean, yeah, if it were a phone, the phone would look better. Responsive is what it looks like. Very cool. So back to you. It's not a text box. It is a canvas. Back to this. Right. Rendered UI. Yeah. For example, form control elements. So they're working with forms for text input. Yeah, such as input and text area. Maintain their own state in the DOM as the user types. With React, you can move this mutable state into a React components state. State. The user's input becomes part of the application state, so React controls the value of that input field. Wait, I have to read that sentence again. With React, you can move this mutable state. It's a mutable state into a React components state, right? So maybe something in here can be moved to the React's component state. React components state, right? So React controls the value of that input field. Typically, you have React components with input fields that user can type into. React components with input fields that user can type. It will be a controlled input form, right? The code editor. Okay, so now we go to the challenge. You can see this horizontal rule that tells us that now the challenge is to be taken. Yeah, if you guys see here, that's the horizontal rule with some pixels, maybe some thickness to it, right? The code editor has the skeleton of a component called controlled input. Yes, it does. To create a controlled input element. Yep. The component's state is already initialized. It has been initialized with an input property that holds an empty string. Yes, it does. Wait, to create a control called has the skeleton. I think they mean this. They already have a controlled input element. Controlled input and then element. You can see that here, right? Right now it's empty because this string is empty. If I write something, you would see that here. Cool. Okay. It holds an empty. This value represents the text a user types into the input field. Yep. Are you literally making us type Google like create a Google Doc or what? Hello would appear, but Google Docs works in a different way. I can edit text the way the moment I write it. Must be something. We'll see. This value represents the text a user types into the input field. Yep. First, create a method called handle change. Create a method that has a parameter called event. Acha. Okay. When the method is called, so handle change is called. Let's write it while we're reading it. Handle change, there is a parameter called event. When the method is called, when you call this, it receives an event object. With a parameter called event, done. When it receives an event object, that contains a string of text from the input element. Event equals to then what? It receives an event object. This function receives something in the parameter that receives an event object, an object that contains a string of text from the input element. What do you mean? It contains a string of text from the input element. You can access this string with event. Have we not inserted the input element yet? Okay. Yeah, I think we haven't. You can access this string with event.target value. I see. Okay. Update the input property of the component's state with this new string. I see. Then I use this set state. So set state, cut this. Right, now this will become what? Input. Okay, now input event.target.value. Wait a minute, where is state then? I'm not writing this correctly, am I? What if I write event here? Yeah, as if that's going to change anything. Right. Maybe, you know what, this isn't correct. We'll write, for now, I'll comment this out. Yeah. No errors. Very good. In the render method, which means this, create the input element. So first we have to create the input element. Very good. Input. Now I think input is a self-closing tag, so good. Right. We have an input element. Add a value attribute which is equal to the input property. What do you mean? Input. Abbe? Input. Weird. Right. क्या चाहिए? You can access this string. नहीं, sorry. Add a value attribute. Right. Value attribute, which is equal to the input property of the component's state. Equal. So something equal to the input property of the component state. What? Let's read that again. Input property of the component's state. Component का state ये है, so you should write this dot state dot input. I think so. Let's say I write something. I can't write anything. Right. क्या चाहिए? टाइप होना चाहिए ना. The component state, and then add an onChange event handler set to the handle change method. Then add an onChange event handler set to the handler change method. Handle change के अंदर. Add to handle list. Add an onChange event handler. Oh, yeah, I think we saw that. onChange. Where do we write it? onChange. I did see it before. Maybe I didn't. Bye. Let's check again. This dot props onChange. Bind this. Wait, what do you want? Add an onChange event handler set to the handle change method. What does that mean? Can I write anything? No, because it's when you type in the अच्छा तो text भी लिखना पड़ेगा ना. Now I can write. No, still cannot. Why not? No. Right. Value text. No. Input type text. If I were to write radio, it would become radio. Right. Why doesn't it not? Does it not? Can't type anything. So it's not the problem. There's no problem with you. I can remove this. When you type in the input box, that text is processed by handle change. But unfortunately, I can't type anything. Processed by handle change method set as the input property in the local state. I mean, do you mean this? Event, no. I'll have to check this again, of course. The local state rendered as the value input. The component state is a single source of truth regarding the input data. Last but not least, don't forget to add the necessary bindings in the constructor. Yeah, I have to. Let's paste the bindings first then. Can't see the binding here. Okay. Right. Instead of handle click, it should say handle change. So first, now we've binded it. I still can't input anything. There must be something wrong with the way I've written the code. Must be. Right. Now first create a let's code it. The code editor has a skeleton. Oh, sorry. Wrong place to move the mouse. Now I won't be able to move it. Yes. Right. The code editor has a skeleton of a component called controlled input. Yes. To create a controlled input element. To create a controlled input element. To create a controlled input element. Yep, you can see that controlled input. The component's state is already initialized with an input property. Yes, it is. That holds an empty string. Yes, it does. This value represents the text a user types into the input field. Okay, very good. Right. First create a method called handle change. So the first thing we did was we created a method called handle change that has a parameter called event. When the method is called, it receives an event object that contains a string of text from the input element. They mean this. यहाँ पे भी कुछ लिखना पड़ेगा. Right. But it would take whatever we write as input, won't it? You know what? Let me cut this. Now can I write anything? Yes, I can. Command Z. Now it says value equals to this dot state dot input. So because of that, now this thing's value is in empty string. So I can't literally write anything. So I'm going to cut this and see for myself what we are exactly supposed to do. Right. That holds an empty string. This value represents the text of text in user types into the input field. Into the input field. So whatever we write into the input field. Okay. So first we created we created a handle change thing with an event parameter. You know what? Let's comment you out for now. So comment भी करने में तकलीफ. Good. So I'll comment this out. Okay. Handle change is when the method is called, it receives an event object. It receives an event object that contains a string of text from the input element. Yeah. Achha. There is a parameter called event. When the method is called, it receives an event object that contains an event object. चलो एक object उसको मिलेगा, ठीक है. Receives an event object that contains a string of text from the input element. Input element का text निकाल के दिखाओ. ये जो मैंने C लिखा वो कहाँ लिखाएंगे? We don't know, right? So we're not setting the state yet for this. इसको change करो. ये बोल क्या है? Receives an event object. Basically it receives, so it returns. I mean they're different things. Receives an event object. Can't write return. Coffee. That contains a string of text from the input element. Receives text from the input element. You can access this string with event.target.value. Whatever I write will now be stored hopefully in input, right? No, not yet. But now whatever we write is stored in it, I think. Maybe not, let's see. That contains a string of text from, you can access this string with event.target.value. we hadn't written the input element yet, so yes, inside the method, so inside the method we did it returns an object. It receives an object, not returns. Oh, I see. What do you mean receives an object? Okay. Update the input property of the component's state with this new string. Update the input property of the component's state with this new string. So अभी हम लोग set state का इस्तेमाल करेंगे. Where is that? It's quite the thing, not you then. इसको बंद करो. Okay. इसको भी बंद कर देता है. Bind this set state with this, render in the user interface another way, right? Not you either. Nope. Oh, it was the previous project itself. I see. Now we're changing the counter's value to whatever we put as input, right? So it won't be counter state.counter, it should be okay. Rather this dot set state, this dot set state, and then state, and then this should become input. Maybe, let's see. Nothing is visible here, so not exactly. We can't simply write input becomes event. Input is state counter plus input event. So I can write state dot input plus event. Now whatever we write here should be stored in it, but you see, not yet. ये मुझे ऑब्जेक्ट समझ ही नहीं आ रहा है. What is this? Why can't I? Enter दबाने पे no, nothing happens. Basically whatever we write here will be visible here, and why is it not? The question is. Let's read this again. That has a parameter called event. When the method is called, it receives an event object that contains a string of text from the input element. You can access the string inside the method. Update the input property of the component's state with this new string. The thing I don't suppose we're supposed to do this. Actually, we're supposed to cut this, move you, and instead of it being event, we're supposed to paste this. I don't see anything in this yet. Do not worry. What if I write something here? The moment I write something, I can see it appearing here. So we haven't changed the value of that yet. Whatever I write and I press enter, it's not visible. So maybe this function call isn't being called. We'll see. Okay. We don't call this function here, do we? So that's why. Right. In the render method, create the input element above the h4 tag. So basically here, add a value attribute which is equal to the input property. So we know where to add the attributes. Add a value attribute which is equal to the input property on the component's state. Input property of the component's state. क्यों? वो तो सेम ही है ना. फिर से पढ़ते हैं. Add a value attribute which is equal to the property of the component's state. State num. Do I simply write input then? Right. Can't write input itself. Can't write input because there is no input. This dot state dot input, and that returns an empty line. What if I write this dot state? It says object. Yeah, because state is, it contains an object. What do we do when we want to return the name of the key? Equal to the input property of the component state. Acha, okay, wait, no. We're supposed to write input property, input. Come on, not in out, input. Input property of the component's state. So this is this dot state component's state. Then add an onChange event handler set to handle change method. I think they mean this event handler. By event handler they mean this, but I could be wrong, of course. This dot state and an onChange. Wait, how do we write onChange event handler? I have to read this again. Create a React component, pass array. क्या बोला था उन्होंने? onChange event handler. Create a stateful event handler. Forgot what event handlers are. Element event. I see. Oh, acha. And the event of. Nice. Add an onChange event handler set to the handle change method. Event handler on change. You write onChange equals this. In JavaScript you write object.onChange, so probably this dot onChange and then a function. But wait, then add an onChange. Oh, acha, add and then a function. I see. Function is called what? Handle. That is invalid. There is no such thing as onChange, so I can't access it with dot notation. Nightmare. Well, not a nightmare really. Yawn number 2. Create the input element above the h4 tag and a value attribute which is equal to input property of a component state and an onChange event handler set to handle change method. Note I'm going to look at this. It says onClick this dot toggle visibility. So I think it should be this way. onChange, right? event handler set to, yeah, when you type in the input box, that text is processed by handle change method set as the input property in the local state and render the value of the input box on the page. The component state is the single source of truth regarding the input data. Basically, okay, that just happened. If I write something, then that becomes the value. That's not supposed to happen, is it? Event.target.value. This should be something else then. क्या बोला है? Add a value attribute which is equal to the input property of the component's state, which is this. Why? तो पूरा input गायब हो जाएगा ना भाई, just like it did now. We shouldn't write it this way then. Add a value attribute which is equal to the input property of the component's state. तो ये component है, उसका state है ये, और उसकी input property ये है. What if I simply write input here? समझ नहीं आएगा. Input is not defined exactly. That is, but the moment I write anything, it will disappear. Why? Because after input, it tries to print something here, but it has an error. यहाँ पे बताया होगा उन्होंने. Console में जाएंगे तो बोलेगा. अबे, no problem. A letter. Now cannot read the properties of null reading value. चलो ये पढ़ के थोड़ा सोचते हैं. Now we have value. Cannot read properties of null reading value. Open your browser console to learn more. तो ये दिखा. Console, right? Okay, you can stop. We have literally opened the browser. Like unexpected token. Type error. Input is not defined. Yeah. कुछ तो कोड में लिखा है हमने ऐसा, obviously. My first doubt is, where are you? You. This value attribute should have a different value. Maybe not. Because if I write something in here, it would store that as the value of this input thing, which in turn would say would be handle change. You can see on change पे वो handle change को call करता है. So I think whenever I do something, it calls this function. What does this function do? So it has an argument called event. So this dot set state. So it changes the state of this empty string. This dot set state equals. So this empty string will now become input, then state dot input, not this. State का input है plus ये plus what? Event dot target dot value. So we go back to this. Event मतलब क्या भाई? ये function call this input का target. Where is target then? Target something. A event as in this as in passed as this line. You see, handle on change this dot handle change. So we write what? In the render method, create the input element above the for each word. I get the value attribute which is equal to the input property of the component's state. बराबर तो लिखा है. Input property of the component's state. Then add an on change event handler. They mean this. Set to the handle change method. So ये handle change को call करता है. When you type in the input box, that text is processed by handle change method set as the input property in the local state. What does that mean? Set as a input property in the local state. state dot input event target dot value. And rendered as the value. Can you guys see anything? Oh, sorry, you didn't even see my face. You can't even see my face. Just a second. In the render method, create the input element above the h4 tag. ये सब किया, ये भी किया. When you type in the input box, the text is processed by handle change method. Yup. Set as the input property in the local state. Local state. Yeah. Set state. And rendered as the value in the input box on the page. Rendered as the value in the input box on the page. The component state is the single source of truth regarding the input data. What? I'm going to read the first para. First create a method, okay, handle change, that is a parameter called event. This was the clearest thing. What when the method is called, मतलब जब कॉल करेंगे तो करना क्या है, तो ये करेगा क्या. When the method is called, it receives an event object that contains a string of text from the input element. You can access this string. Basically this. You can access it receives an event object. It receives. कहाँ से ये? No, I think जो भी हम लोग टेक्स्ट देने वाले हैं वो. Event object that contains a string of text from the input element. अच्छा, तो यहाँ पे जो भी मैं टेक्स्ट लिखूँगा, it should be stored inside an object then, right? जो भी लिखूँगा मैं. It says receives an event object. Now I'm not putting anything. I'm not putting any text that says received an object. Receives an event object that contains a string of text from the input element. मतलब ये जो भी लिखेंगे इसके अंदर जाएगा, इससे पास होगा. You can access this string with event.target.value. Event.target.value. Target. अच्छा, तो हमने उसको एक्सेस किया. Event.target.value. Update the input property of the component. So input property of the component's state. Update the input property of the component state with this new string. Type text. अभी भी कुछ ना कुछ गलती है हमारी. In the render method, this method, create the input. फिर से पढ़ो इसको. As a scanner of create a controlled input element, the component's state is already initialized with an input value that holds in this value represents the text, and a user types into the input field. This input field. First create a method that has a parameter. When the method is called, it receives an event object that contains a string of text from the input element. It receives an event object. एक object जो event object. What? It contains a string of text from the input element. एक object उसको चाहिए. From the oh my god. I need some hints. Get a hint, please. Right. The problem explanation. Here's the idea is to create a control input where the text updates from your state, not from the browser. So to begin with, we have a skeleton in which we have a class named controlled input and a state variable named input. Yeah. State variable named input. Very good. Now all you need to do is take that state, and when a change in the input box is observed, trigger a function that changes the value inside that input box input and in the paragraph below it. Pretty much, yeah, I get it. मतलब ये करना है, I get that. So your first step will be making a function that changes the variable input. So it says handle change event. This dot set state input is event target value. So I think event target value. I see. We're not supposed to put a function for this. Simply changing the value will do. Cool. Now if I write this, oh, that was it. हो गया काम. Come on. So अच्छा वो function call की वजह से तकलीफ हो रही थी उसको. Whatever I write in here will be pasted in here. When I press control and when I press enter, this should also reset itself. Maybe I can write that function. Maybe I can. I probably can. Now I get it. So on change, on enter, maybe when we press enter, instead of a line break, it should call a function that would reset this counter. तो जो भी लिखा है वो यहाँ पे print हो गया. Oh yeah. In that case, then what we have to do is कहाँ गया? This dot state dot input plus I think. अरे बाप रे, ये तो लिखता ही जा रहा है. I think I have found an infinite loop. Maybe ये जो भी लिखेंगे उसके ऊपर लिखा जाएगा. So I think this will keep going. Right now it's empty. If I write a here, no problem. A now, it was 1 before, now it's 2. If I write it now, it will add 3 to it. Oh, sorry, 4 to it. Why? Because 3 plus 1, 4. 3 plus 1 a is 4. Think again. अबे delete नहीं हो रहा? Oh my god, the delete button doesn't work. The delete button doesn't work. Wow. Anyway, we are done with this anyway. आगे देखते हैं क्या होगा. We ran the tests and we passed it. Yay. Right, now we're going to create a controlled form. The last challenge showed that React can control the internal state for certain elements like input and text area, which makes them controlled components. Oh, we have 3 viewers watching today. Thank you so much for joining. Just a second. Oh, I just noticed something. This video's category is how to and not education. Well, I'm learning myself, but I'm not teaching anyone. I mean, it can be education anyway. We don't know yet. Cool. Now I can see we've finished an hour of recording. I'm going to take a short break, and when I come back, we will resume with this code. Thank you. Maybe I'll get some more coffee. I feel a little bit sleepy. So yeah, when I come back, we will continue with the live. Thank you. Don't go anywhere. Thank you. So we're back now. Hello. We have one viewer. Thank you for joining. Thank you for watching. Back to you. It says submit. Let's see. We're going to create a form now, right? The last challenge showed that React can control the internal state for certain elements like input and the text area, which makes them controlled components. This applies to other form elements as well, including the regular HTML form element. The myForm component is set up with an empty form. Oh, I see. So when we click submit, it will be submitted, and the state will become empty again. Right? Maybe that's what they want to do. Right. So this is, we've already entered the challenge. So before I enter this challenge, let me read this first. It has proven to be more beneficial when I read this first and then read the challenge. So I kind of know more about what to do with everything, right? So we have a class myForm that extends this. There are two values, two properties. First is input and the second is submit, right? Now it says this dot handle change. There is a function called handle change, and there is another function called handle submit. Okay, so I think we're going to use these functions somewhere in here. I can already see that, right? So they're bind now to the state. They're bounded. Yeah, they're bound. Then we have handle change, which takes event as a as a parameter. It says, and it changes the state value of this input to event target value. Very good. So whatever is being written. Next, we have handle submit button. Handle submit has not been defined yet. We don't know what we're supposed to do, but probably we're supposed to do something with this string. Very good. Next, then in the render method, what do we return? So it says div form on submit this handle submit. Okay, and inside this we are supposed to write something. So they've already defined a form element for us, beginning and the end of the form element, and on submit. So when we click submit, it will take this, it will call this handle submit function. Think again. So handle submit, it takes the value of event target dot value. Now I don't see event dot target dot value here, so we're probably supposed to do something to that. Maybe button dot type. Oh, and you can also see something's missing from here. Okay, this will probably be a button, maybe button type text and some value, or it could simply be an input with a value, whatever it may be. Okay, so now that we have a better handle on this code, a little better handle than before, so let's see the challenge. What does this challenge say? So that's the longest challenge I've seen so far, I hope. So the myForm component is set up with an empty form with a submit handler. Yeah, they mean this submit handler. Okay, the submit handler will be called when the form is submitted. Submit handler will be called when the form is submitted. Basically जब हम बटन को क्लिक करेंगे, when we click on this button, this function will be called. Right. Cool. We've added a button which submits the form. We can see it. You can see it has the type set to submit. Yup. Indicating it is the button controlling the form. Add the input element in the form, probably here, and set its value and on change attributes like the last challenge. I should have kept that open. Instead, I'm going to reuse this then. You can see this code has been written quite nicely. Input with value as this and on change as this. Exactly like this. And they say so too. You can see here it says add the input element and the forms and set its value and on change attributes like the last challenge. So like the last challenge, this dot state dot input, of course. So its default value is this, but then it changes, right? And on change basically जब हम बटन करेंगे और उसको change करेंगे, so on change it will call this function. So the moment we press submit, basically it will call handle change function, which has not been defined yet. Handle change method actually, not a function, right? Yeah, right, done. Now next you should then complete the handle submit, this one, which is handle change. Oh acha, this will also, acha, we've defined handle change, we've not defined handle submit yet, right? Okay, so I think its default value is this dot state dot input. We could set the default value to be anything really, right? That would be the default value the moment, yeah. तो वो डिफ़ॉल्ट में वो उसको रखता है, स्टोर करके रखता है. ओके, आई गेट दैट. सो बेसिकली इफ आई राइट समथिंग हियर इट विल अपीयर. आई कैन एडिट इट टू, या, बट एनीवे यू गाइस गेट इट. कूल. वापस जाते हैं अभी हैंडल सबमिट. सबमिट के बाद सबमिट का क्या होता है? You should then complete the submit handle submit so that it sets the component state property submit to the current input value in the local state. Yeah, let's read that again. Complete the handle submit method so that it sets the component state property submit to the current input value. तुमने जो सबमिट किया अभी एक चीज़ के अंदर स्टोर करेंगे. वेरी गुड. सो वट एवर वी सबमिट, वट एवर वी राइट इन द इनपुट, and after that when we press submit it should get stored to this thing. Very cool. So clicking the submit button does two things. It will set the value of input from an empty string to this event.target.value. Oh no. एक second, think. If I do this and when I press submit, this should reset itself. Interesting. करते हैं वो भी, उसमें प्रॉब्लम कुछ होता होगा. ओके, आगे जाके करते हैं. It should reset itself. Why is it not resetting itself is beyond me. Right, but we write this dot set state, then parentheses, and then curly brackets. Inside this we write, what's it called? Submit, right? It's called submit. The property is called submit. So submit colon, and in this we store the value of state. So we write I think this dot state, right? Do I simply write state? No, this dot state dot input. Do we need this? I don't know. Let's find out. Okay. So that it sets the component state property submit to the current input value in the local state. Yeah. It takes event, right? Event dot state and dot input. Okay. Note, you must also call event.prevent default in the submit handler. Submit handler, I think they mean this submit handler. To prevent the default form submit behavior which will refresh the web page. मतलब ये करूँगा तो क्या होगा? Error. Can't submit anything. Show me those 10 log entries. I'm not sure. Cannot read properties of undefined reading input. कहाँ पे? My form dot handle submit. So my form dot handle submit at object dot qh. I think they mean this object dot qh. Now I don't know. Uncaught error. I don't know if that's refresh. You know what? Let's clear console. Let's see what happens when we run this. Uncaught error. Cannot read properties of null. Reading match. What do you say? It says type error. Cannot read. Yeah, but where? At HTML document anonymous. As if I understand what that means. Now it also says 64 issues. Form field element should have an ID or name attribute. They mean this, or an incorrect use of label for equals form element. I'm also supposed to edit this, by the way. यहाँ पे भी कुछ लिखना होगा ना. अच्छा वो है, वो ठीक है, वो बाद में है, right. So I think we're not finished yet. Right, you must also call event.prevent default in the submit handler. To prevent submit for camp organization, the default behavior has been disabled here to prevent refreshes from setting challenge code. But what do you mean? Where? Call the submit handler. This is the submit handler. Maybe I need to read this again then. Handle submit. My form component, yes. Submit handler, command def, HNDLER. So the first handler is this. My form component is set up with an empty form with a submit handler. The submit handler will be called when the form is submitted. Basically this on submit handler, yeah, it will be called. So वो क्या बोल रहा है? You must also call event.prevent in the submit handler. Must also call, so not only this but also that. How do we write that? Double ampersand. Okay. Do I write? Okay. Event.prevent FAULT. I can't write that. We should write this .event.prevent default then. I hope so. Now this has disappeared. So maybe not. This is not the way. This .prevent default. Okay. Submit. Cannot read properties. ठीक है. Cannot read properties of null. Reading match. What do you mean reading match? Where did I write reading match? Maybe let's read this. This handle change this set state input. Right, now it doesn't call that event object. This does, because we're storing the value. What does handle submit take as an argument? Submit is event.submit is this dot state dot input. चलो देखते हैं क्या करके, ठीक है. We cannot write event.target value because it would store something. Okay. But ये this prevent default को मैंने call कर दिया कुछ करके in the submit handler. So I don't think we're supposed to do paste it here. In the submit handler is they're saying in the submit handler. Right. Cut you please. This is the submit handler. Also call. So we're supposed to call something. Do I simply write prevent in here? It says event dot and it has a red underline. Maybe put a comma now. Right. That's not allowed. Semicolon then. That is also not allowed. What do we write? Do we write this dot event? This is not allowed. Okay. maybe put all three and put a comma. Nope. This is unexpected token, expected a comma instead of this. Now if I write this, now it will expect another comma here, so not exactly. And now I get it. Kya yaar? Kato is obviously it won't work here because that's one function. I don't even need to write this now. I can simply write event dot prevent default. Works. To prevent, yeah, okay. Finally create an h1 tag after the form. This h1 tag, let's close that h1 tag, quite simple. After the form, which renders the submit value from the component state. We can do that. This dot state dot submit, and I do not see anything because nothing has been submitted. Nice. It prints, but it also has an error. Wow. Okay. So I think this handle change thing worked. Sorry, handle submit thing worked somehow. Maybe we messed up with this. Why does this return an error? Okay. You can then type in the form and click the button, and you should see your input rendered to the page. So yes, we are seeing, but this says an uncaught type error. So that means somewhere in here is a line of code, is a few is something that needs to be changed. Maybe value and on change. No, this dot handle change, it calls that function. This takes in that input event dot prevent default, this dot set state. Let's try to understand this. What does this say? Type error, cannot read properties of null, reading match. Now where in here is something called match? Maybe, am I even supposed to look for the keyword match? No, I don't think so. It says minified react error, visit reacts for the full message or use the minified dev environment. I will read this. The full text of your error you just encountered is objects are not valid as a React child object with keys input submit. If you meant to render a collection of children, use an array instead. I do not understand what that means. But it says uncaught type error, cannot read. Where? Line to bata. It says anonymous 3228. 32nd character. Cannot read properties of undefined reading prevent default. Think maybe clear console and try submitting something now. Uncaught error, very good. Where, my friend? They write it for us, whatever this is. If action.match, then HTTP is this, right? This must be their code. Bootstrap.main.css. They must have, this must be their code. So somewhere in here is an error that we do not know of, and I don't think we will be able to pass this challenge until, oh, we can pass this challenge, interesting. But when I submit it, it will be visible, but it still says uncaught type error. I have no clue why, but we have finished this project. I do want to see what the problem is. I mean, it's kind of clear. You can see here input with value, this dot state dot input, literally handle change. It takes the input value of the default input value, and then when you click the button submit, it calls the handle change function, which is, what does it do? Handle change stores the value of whatever we put inside this text, input inside this text, and it stores that in this state called input, right? The moment it stores everything in there, you can literally see this event dot target dot value. So this is the event, the submit button, event dot target. कहाँ पे target? I don't see any target, but yeah, you can see on submit, handle submit, on change, handle change. So when we click submit, the function is called, and then this function is called again. Interesting. Let's read the thing again. My form component is set up with an empty form with a submit handler. Handle submit or submit handler. Cool. The submit handler will be called when the form is submitted. When the form on submit, the function will be called. Very good. We've added a button which submits the form. They mean this button, this submit button. You can see here button with the type submit and the text submit. Cool. That submits the form. You can see it has the type set to submit. Yep, I can see it, indicating it is the button controlling the form. Yes, it is. And the input element in the form and add the input element in the form and set its value and on change attributes like the last challenge. I literally copied and pasted everything like the last challenge. Not like the last challenge, from the last challenge. So input with value and then this and then on change and then this dot handle change. It's literally calling handle change. You should then complete the handle submit. Wait a second. In the previous challenge, yes, it called the handle change thing. Our function is also called handle change, literally handle change. Wow. Okay. Input dot value, this dot state dot input. Yeah, like the last challenge. So it's not the same thing. उसके जैसे उसमें किया था वैसे यहाँ पे भी करना है. So I literally copied and pasted it and checked whether we are missing something. This says the default value of the this thing will be empty, an empty string, because this is an empty string. If I were to put this text here, then it would automatically appear here. How? Because of this value attribute. If there were no attribute value, this would be empty. Cool. So value is valid. What do we need this for? On change, handle change. So it calls handle change, which is different. This calls the change and not the submit button. So you can see here, handle change. Acha, this calls handle submit and this calls handle change, right? जब भी मैं इसमें इनपुट करूँगा, कुछ भी लिखूँगा, basically the moment it changes, it calls a function and it stores the value of that input in this. So if we were to print input instead, if we were to print input instead, अभी input की value on change पे change हो गई है. Basically what does on change mean? On change मतलब यहाँ में से इस input box में से कोई एक character को भी add किया गया. Let's say even if I add a comma, now the value in the state in state input is a comma. Right, I get it. Cool. Okay, so that's not wrong. That is correct. Do we need it? Yes, we do actually. That it's a function is being called, right? So that works. We should then complete the handle submit method. So we go back to this method called handle submit, which we didn't finish, but we finished it now. So that it sets the component state property submit. So sets the component state property. So this is the component's state property. अरे बाप रे क्या है यार? What is this? Did I minimize this? I minimized this. Right. How do you do that? Wait. How did I minimize this? That was so cool. I minimized a piece of code. How do you do that? I want to see it again. शायद कुछ गलती की, but हो गया. See, I minimized some code without even realizing it. Right. Rename, change all occurrences, format document. Interesting. So basically we can do all that. Command palette. That's the command palette. Literally add cursor above. Oh my god, these are all shortcuts. What? So we want fold, not unfold. So it says toggle fold. It says command K or command L. Toggle block comment, toggle fold. I want to toggle high contrast theme. Oh, that's so much better. The editor looks so much better. It may not be good for you guys, and it's definitely not good for me. F1, right? Yeah, this is much better. That hurt the eyes actually. That extreme black and extreme white color hurt the eyes. This is much better. But if we go back to this, add cursor above, below, no. I do want to wrap, कहाँ गया? Fold, oh, there's fold here. So fold is option command and square, left square, bracket. Fold all is of course command K or command O. I see. Let's press command K, command A, and then command K. Nothing happened. Command O, nothing happened. But if I write option and then this, okay, so now all of this has been folded. What if I only want to fold U? Okay, so that's how you fold that stuff. Oh my god. Right. Command Shift Z, please. No. Okay. इसको एक ही लाइन में रख देते हैं and I will fold you then. That would be so cool. Right. How do we fold this? This is how we fold it. So now it's literally stored inside constructor props. Quite amazing. Now do we unfold it? I don't know. I don't care really. Okay, but now because I folded it, put it in the same line, all of these properties are inside the constructor class. All of these properties. Super props, this dot state, this dot handle change. This gives me a new perspective. I'm going to do the same for all of them then. To look what it looks like. To see what it looks like. So that's one handler. Yeah, we can remove change below this line for now. Right. फिर line वाइन डाल देंगे, don't worry guys. हटाओ. Where does this end? हाँ ने दो functions call किए. Yeah, no problem, got it. इसके अंदर दो functions call किए. And then we have render. These are all methods. So this is constructor method, this is handle change method, handle submit method, and then render method. And render method returns our HTML code. So every component probably has these. Okay, much better to understand now that I've folded some of the text, so to speak, the text. Cool. Let's read this again. You can see it has the form type set to submit. ये सब ठीक है. You should then complete the handle submit. So ये handle submit को हम लोग complete कर रहे थे, मतलब कर दिया था. बढ़िया. है हाँ. Okay, much better. Cool. So it says event prevent default this dot set state. Very good. Back to this. So handle submit method, so it sets the component state property submit to the current input value in the local state. Yep, current input value in the local state submit. So submit is this dot state dot input. So this dot state dot input. So input की value submit में जो भी हमने यहाँ पे डाली. So command Z please. Yeah. So whatever I write here, the moment I write something, it gets stored in this state method. State method's input property, and when I click on submit, then it gets stored in this. Cool. But this doesn't reset itself. I don't know why they didn't ask us to do that yet, but होगा कुछ reason खाली string रखने का. Anyway, back to this. Semicolons all the way. Cool. Right. So that it sets the component state property submit to the current input value in the local state. हाँ तो बराबर है, तो कर दिया. फिर इसने बोला event और prevent default भी डालो, तो डाल दिया. In the submit handler, handle submit in the submit handler. Prevent default form behavior. Yep. Done. Finally create an h1 tag. We also created an h1 tag which would return what? It would return the submit value. This dot state dot submit. Right now the value of submit is empty, so it can't return anything. The moment we press this and then press submit, it will appear. Cool. So I do not see the why this thing keeps returning an error. Now maybe if I because yeah, when I press submit, it still says cannot read properties of null reading match. I am obsessed with this, but not too obsessed because I don't care that much. I hope that it appears again, occurs again, it shows up again, so that we can try to figure out what it is, why it is. But for now, let's see. Pass state as props to child components. You saw a lot of examples that passed props to child JSX elements. Alright, we are in React. Right. Pass state as props to child components. Now that's new. Constructor props, tuple props. Okay. You saw a lot of examples that passed props to child JSX elements and child React components in previous challenges. You may be wondering where those props come from. A common pattern is to have a stateful component containing the state important to your app that then renders child components. You want these components to have access to some pieces of that state which are passed in as props. For example, maybe you have an app component that renders a navbar among the other components in your in your app. You have state that contains a lot of user information, but the navbar only needs access to the user's username so it can display it. You pass that piece of state to the navbar component as a prop. Oh right, yeah. If you think about it, this is also an app. Why? Because it prints my profile's profile picture, no other profile's profile picture. Don't see what I mean? If you look here, that's my profile picture, right? How is that there? How does it not, of course there must be algorithms for that, but it shows me that, so it's dynamic, it's different for each user. If you're let's say John Cena, then it wouldn't show you anything, right? Or if you're Rick Astley, then it would it would never give up on you. But yeah, those are all just jokes, but you get it. My profile picture is my profile picture. For others IDs it would be different, so that if you can call that an app, yeah, so then that app, what my image information is stored in a state component, not a state component, state method or constructor method. Really, constructor method stores the state anyway, right? That renders, yeah, for example, okay, only needs to access the user's username so it can display it. So access the user's profile picture so it can display it. You pass that piece of state to the navbar component as a prop. Yeah, this pattern illustrates some important paradigms in React. The first is unidirectional data flow. एक direction में flow करता है. The state flows in one direction down the tree of your application's components, from the stateful parent component to the child components. The child components only receive the state data they need. Yeah. Oh, yawns. So many yawns. I need some coffee. Right, so you pass a piece of state to the number. Yeah, okay, unidirectional. The child components only receive the state data they need. The second is that complex stateful apps can be broken down into just a few or maybe a single stateful component. The rest of your components simply receive state from the parent as props and render a UI from that state. Or I have to read that again. The child components only receive the state data they need, right? The second is that complex stateful apps can be broken down into just a few or maybe a single stateful component. The rest of your components simply receive state from the parent as props and render a UI from that state. Okay. I think what they're getting at is, if you think of a shopping website, yeah. Okay. Anyway, right. This pattern illustrates some important pattern. I read that, didn't I? The rest of your components simply receive state from parent. Yeah, yeah. It begins to create a separation where state management is handled in one part of code and UI rendering in another. This principle of separating state logic from UI logic is one of React's key principles. When it's used correctly, it makes the design of complex stateful applications much easier to manage. Okay, hopefully, I will also learn to use it correctly. Right now, it's all over the place. Or it's another yawn, guys. I need to make some coffee. Let me come back in some while. I know it's only been 35 minutes, but sorry about that. You can speed up the loop, or maybe you can try practicing it in your own. Um, what can I say? In your own editor, in your own thing. Thank you. I'll be back. Yo, I'm back. Let's continue. Sorry about the long breaks. I keep getting calls from the family, someone or the other, and I have to speak to them, and then it takes some time, and then I take some, time off to rest my eyes a little bit. But now I'm back, and we can see what we were up to. Right. So we were learning about unidirectional data flow and this, when used correctly. Now we're supposed to do something to. We're going to pass a state as a stateless component. Let's find out. Okay, what are we supposed to do? Something in here we're supposed to do. I can see that. Before I read the challenge, let's look at the code in the editor. It says class my app extends react.component. Yeah, all of this is pretty standard. Class and the name of the class, and then it extends react.component, then curly braces. Inside this curly braces is all the stuff that happens. Now we have the constructor method, then we have the render method. Inside the render method, we ask it to return the HTML code. Before return, if we write anything in here, this will be interpreted as JavaScript code. Now we see here, what does this say? Navbar, right? And we're supposed to, I can see from the space that we're supposed to do something to the navbar. So my app component is stateful. Yes, I mean it has a constructor class and it's stateful. Yeah, and renders in navbar component, right, which is below us, which I didn't even read at all. I did not even read that at all, right? As a child, so yeah, it would print this, it would render this, not this. I mean, it would render both, but it would render this div, and inside that div, it would render this div. Cool. Yawns upon yawns. Sorry about that. I just had coffee. Anyway, right. So it renders a navbar component as a child. It does very good. It does cool. Pass the name property in its state down to the child component, then show the name in the h1 tag. That's part of the navbar render method. We already have a name property, so what I'm going to do is here I put this. We write this dot state dot name. I see, maybe the other way around. What do you want? Some name in this. I think something we should write something. I forgot what. My name is this. Hi, my name is what? My name is who? My name is Slim Shady. Hi kids, do you like violins? Let me see me put 9-inch nails in each one of my eyelids. Wait. मुझे read करना पड़ेगा वापस. Maybe let's read this again. Okay, not maybe. Pass the name property in its state. State down to the child component. मतलब यहाँ पे. So I think I passed it correctly. Name, right? This dot state dot name. Straight down to the child component. This is the child component. Then show the name in the h1 tag. That's part of the navbar render method. They mean this. Name should appear after the text hello my name is. I forgot what we're supposed to do here to refer to the previous projects. Create a complex, no. Create a react component, no. Write a react component from scratch, nope. Render class component, pass props, pass an array, default props. What are we to do? We're supposed to call this. Use props to define the no access props using this props. already accessed them. Review using props, create a stateful component. Note, yeah, set state, we went through that. I'll have to read them again. This is rendering. This is user equals, and then inside this we write something. So we have props.user, and this is how you write it. So instead of user dot, here we write name equals, and inside this I don't remember what. Right, now this is null. Can't print anything because we already have camperbot. How do we ask it to return camperbot? This dot state dot name, so this dot state dot name. It's already good. We wanted to return this. I think we're supposed to store this. Wait, no. Think. Pass the name property in its state down to the child component. In this, then my name is. Pass the name property. And show the name in the h1 tag. It's part of the navbar render method. Name should appear after text is. Right. Right now it shows nothing, obviously. What if I were to do this? Taklif. Unexpected token expected something else. Something name equals something is right, but what? Do I simply print that again? No. What do I print then? Name equals. What do we call? Completely forgot. No. This fine in HTML class. Not about self-closing, stateless. Create a React component. Maybe somewhere in here is what we are looking for. This is the one. It says welcome user.mark, but now what if it has already been saved in the state? Props.user. Right. That's how you write it, right? Props. So welcome equals to, that's an arrow function, props. Hello props.user. This is not a prop function. This is not an arrow function. Right. What does this say? So user equals mark, then props.user. So name equals this date dot name. What does this say? Props.user, right? So I think I should write props.name. Taklif. Props is not defined. So what do we write instead? Navbar. No, not navbar. This dot name. Hi, my name is name. This dot. इसमें तो तकलीफ हो गई थी. This not state dot name में. Yeah, cannot read properties of null. Cannot be state dot name. And with this dot name is literally the name. Doesn't mean anything. What do we write? क्या ये इसका syntax फिर से पढ़ो. Users equals mark. User equals mark. Hello mark. It says props. So whatever the argument is, constant welcome. Welcome equals props, and then function which would return this. In curly braces props.user. What am I? Why am I not able to understand this? पढ़ते हैं वापस. My app component is stateful and renders. Okay. Name should appear after the text. Yeah. What is this render? My app Do I write my app then? That feels returns the text to my app, not my camper bot. So no. Props dot state dot name. I'm just making it up now. State dot name is not defined, obviously. Name itself is not defined. What do we write? I completely. I'm going to close these. App navbar dashboard footer. Right. In this challenge, we are going to be passing state, but since state is local to its parent component, we must use props to pass into the child component. Exactly. So do I write here props then? That doesn't store it. I think this should be this dot state dot name. क्या उल्टा होगा? Let's find out. Props dot name. Props is not defined. Right. This dot props dot name. Cannot read properties of null. Reading name. उल्टा लिखना होता है? I don't think so. Navbar में name equals this. For example, name equals name. This not state होगा ना? Let's read this. Using props in child components will allow us to keep all the state data in the parent component, and we can pass the data in one direction to the child components. So this should be props dot state dot name then. Not defined. Props dot name not defined. Navbar this, so that means it takes this as the property name. So dot name, props dot name. Okay. So then there's something wrong with you then. What? Let's read this again. In this challenge, we are going to be passing state. But since state is local to its parent component, we must use props to pass into the child component. Using props in child components will allow us to keep all the state data in the parent component, and we can pass the data in one direction to the children components. Are we also supposed to maybe what? Navbar and then name and this dot state dot name. NAME camper bot. Is there a typo that I'm not looking at correctly? That's not allowed, obviously. Space. Props is not defined. Chalo. Builder, open your browser console to learn more. क्या बोल क्या रहा है? At React DOM production minimum props is not defined. So this means props is not defined according to them. Why? Right. Builder, open your browser console to learn. It says navbar.render wh at pg lg fca bb whatever that is, whatever these lines are. There's an error. All these errors. Not they're not errors. Props is not defined. What is this dot state dot name? No, we can't repeat that code. We'll be using props. So I think we have to change something here. But if I write props dot name, then what's the difference? Again, build error. Look at the solution. I do not understand what they're saying. Okay, so navbar name equals this dot state dot name. So that's correct. This dot state dot name, and in here we have to write this dot props dot name, not state dot name. Achha. And that helps. My name is Camperbot, so we are not asking for the state, we're looking for the props. Hai. The properties rather, but yeah. Let's try to read if they've not given us an explanation. How much of this have we finished, by the way? We have finished 30 out of 47. That is good progress. आज तो खत्म करेंगे ही. Right, pass a callback as props. अरे बाप रे. Right, so we are function. Yeah, now we're calling back functions. Okay. Oh, just yawning away, am I? Aren't I? What time is it? इसलिए 2.5 घंटे खत्म हुआ है ना. शीश. No problem. चलो खत्म कर ले जाते. You can pass state as props to child components, but you're not limited to passing data. You can also pass handler functions. अच्छा. Handler functions are any method that's defined on a React component to a child component. This is how you allow child components to interact with their parent components. You pass methods to a child just like a regular prop. It's assigned a name and you have access to that method name under this dot props in the child component. Okay, that's a good hint. This dot props to that method name under this dot props. Right. There are 3 components outlined in the code editor. Okay, so before we read further, let's find out what this says. Right. We have this component here called my app. This is the stateful component probably, because this is the my app. The rest must be some get input and render input and whatnot. Right. Now class extends React component. This is whatever. It has a state and it has an input value as the empty input value is empty. Now it has been bound, and there is a method called handle change handler, so to speak, which would take in an input and store that value in this input value. You can see that event.target.value. You probably have to set an input, create an input, right? So it would render something from these lines. Cool. So that's my app. Now we go to this stateless function. Stateless, right? What does this render? So it renders this h3, which says get input, and then it takes an input. This is an input box, which does not have a type, so by default it's a text box, text input box, whatever, and it has a value this dot props dot input, so the default value of the input value, whatever. This should be input value, but I don't know why they've said input. Interesting. This should be input value. I mean, this should be input or this should be input. What does that mean? This dot props dot input. So यहाँ पे जब function call करेंगे तो input की value. Interesting. Okay. Right. Then on change this prop. So this dot props dot handle change. So basically it would call the function handle change, which is this. Cool. फिर क्या? Next. Then we have another another one of these. It's called render input. It would render whatever has been input. It says, it calls this dot props dot input, most probably you, I can guess. So why does it say input then? I think because of this input box. So this dot props dot input, I get it. So input render this, cool. We're not supposed to touch any of these, only this. We have to call each function in this stateless component. Right, there are 3 components outlined in the code editor. Yep, the my app component is the parent. अरे हाँ नहीं, ये सब तो कर सकते हैं. What can I write? नहीं, no, sorry. इसको fold करो. This constructor class has been folded. This will be folded. This should be folded. Very good. Then I will also fold return and render, cool, and this entire thing. Okay, so that's one class, that's the second class, and that's the third component. Wow, folding it makes it so much better. So we have 3 components. There are 3 components outlined in the code editor. Yes, we can see that now much better. The my app component is the parent that will render the get input and render input. Yep. Okay. Child components. Yep, these are child components. This is a parent input component. Add the get input component to the render method in my app. Basically in this. इसका अभी कोई काम नहीं है. Get input component in my app. Then pass it a prop called input. अच्छा, pass it a prop called input. Pass it a property. यहाँ पे रेंडर के अंदर. So we go here. So now we write what? We call that get input thing. Right? So get input. Oh, sorry, input. Abhi, sorry, I made a mistake. So we write get input. Not this one actually, we have to put those. Just a second now. Why am I so distracted now? Right, so get input. The moment I wrote get input, this appeared, right? So add the get input component to the render method in my app. Okay. Right, we did that. I'm sorry, why am I distracted? Just a second, back to you. This get input component to the render method in my app, done, kar diya. Next, then pass it a prop called input. So pass it a property called input. So we have to define, so input equals what? Curly braces. What are we supposed to input? Prop called input assigned to input value. Oh, I see that. Very cool. That's why I was confused. Why this says input? अच्छा, तो क्या बोल रहा है ये? Assign to input value from my app says state. So here we can write this dot state dot this. Nice, very nice, very cool. Ding, 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 ding. Okay. Then what? Render my method in my app. Get input component. Then pass it a prop called input assigned it to. Okay. Right. From app's state. Very nice. So now input is my input. Very good. Next. Also create a prop called handle change. अब इसके अंदर एक और prop बनाएंगे. Wait, no. Also create a prop called handle change and pass the input handler. इसके अंदर ही क्या? I think so. Get input component to the render method in my app. Then pass it a prop called. Wait. Render method. हाँ तो बराबर ही है. हाँ. We are inside the render method and we are And then pass it a prop. Also create a prop. Now there are two different things. We're supposed to create a property called handle change. Create a property. What do you mean? Wait, think. Then pass it a prop called input design. So अभी pass तो कर दिया एक property. हाँ. Also create a prop called handle change and pass the input handle change to it. What? I'm confused. Let's read that again. Also create a prop called handle change. This is handle change. That's a method. We're supposed to create a prop. In here, I don't know. That one says pass it. This one says create a prop. What do you mean? Am I supposed to put it here or somewhere else? Create a property called handle change. Fine, chalo. Handle change. Okay, and what? And pass the input handle change to it. This dot state dot handle change. Is that what you're looking for? I do not know. Are we supposed to go inside get input and then edit it? Because this already calls this dot props dot handle change. We have handle change here, and this also stores the value of handle. I don't know. Okay. Next, add the render input to the render method. So next, now instead of get input, now we write render input. So write render input self closing. Okay, to the render method in my app, then create a prop called input. Another input property, creating a property called input, and pass the input value from the state to it. Literally this. So curly braces, paste, render input. Right, there is a input. Okay, right. So now we can see input render, but we do not see an input box. Probably something has to do. Right. Acha. I can't type anything yet. Wow. So something is got to change. कुछ तो हमने लिखा होगा जिसकी वजह से ये हो रहा है. Can I write anything yet? Now, yes, now I can. Interesting. Okay. This dot state dot input value. Are we also supposed to change this event dot target dot value? No. So its default value is empty, and it also defaults to whatever. Back to this. Pass the input value from state to it. Input value from state to it. Done. Once you're finished, you will be able to type bus. Once you're finished, you will be able to type in the input field and the get method, which then calls the handler method in its parent via props. This updates the input in the state. Basically, if I write something should appear. So we haven't written this correctly then, or we didn't write this correctly, whatever way you want to say it. Right. This dot state dot handle change, then it's incorrect. Then I shouldn't write this dot stage, then this dot handle change should do it then. Can I write anything? Yes, I can. It says get input and this says input render. Oh, so what are we? Oh my god. Okay. Basically, I can give it any kind of font. इसको अगर अलग font में print करना है, so I can print that in maybe, for example, so then we have Google Fonts website. What I mean by that is, if you go to fonts.google.com, let's say if I type something here, it will literally show me that as output. If you keep your eyes open here, let's say my name is ... It would literally show me the text in different font styles. So I think the same concept is applied here. This thing is stored in a stateful component. Maybe, I don't know how Google works. I don't know if they use React or something else, maybe only JavaScript. I have no clue, but the concept seems to be similar. Literally, when I change this, it returns the text itself, but now in a different font. This is Roboto, this is Poppins, this is Nanur, this is Akhtab, whatever. We have the same text in the same in different styles. Yeah, the quick brown fox, very cool. So yeah, this prints the text but in the same font, because we haven't mentioned any kind of change in font with this thing, get input or render input. In this P. If we were to give it a different fonts, then probably so we would see it. Right. Anyway, done. 66% complete. Woo! I'll at least finish till 70 before I end this live. Maybe 75. Yeah. Or you know what? Let's. I'm going to take a break at 70. Apparently, this thing is quite taxing. Just a second. I'll turn the lights on. Yeah. Okay. Right. So use the life cycle method component will mount. Okay. New stuff. New knowledge. This is a function. I think, yeah, this is just a function. This is just a method. We're talking about something called life cycle method. Right. React components have several special methods that provide opportunities to perform actions at specific points in the life cycle of a component. Right. These are called life cycle methods or life cycle hooks and allow you to catch components at certain points in time. Okay. This can be before they are rendered, before they update, before they receive props, before they unmount, and so on. Here is a list of some of the main lifecycle methods. Component will mount, component did mount, component should component. Acha. Okay, so they must have been defined. I mean, they take a few arguments then. Here is a list of some of the main lifecycle methods. Will mount, did mount, component update, component did update, component will mount. The next several lessons will cover some of the basic use cases for these lifecycle methods. Okay. The component will mount lifecycle method will be deprecated in a future version of 16.x and removed in version 17. Learn more in this article. I don't know how old this challenge is, so it may have already been deprecated. Right. This was in 2017. If you've browsed the documentation or kept an eye on the recent code reacting, you've probably read that you shouldn't handle subscriptions or side effects in the constructor and construct. Is fiber ready? I don't know what they're talking about, but I'll link this in the description. Anyone can also find it really if you keep your eyes and ears open. And if you are following the same steps as I am, then you'd also be at the same challenge. Anyway, back to this. Right, so certain points in time, article. Right, so these are some lifecycle methods. Right, the component will mount, which is this method, is called before the render method. As you can see here, the render method is written here, and the component will mount method is written here. It's called before the render method when a component is being mounted to the DOM. Log something to the console within component will mount. You may want to have your browser console open to see the output. How do you print something? How do you write something in this? When a component is being mounted here. Log something to the console. So do I simply write console.log? I think yes. Hello. Right, is that it? You may want to should render. My component should render a div element. It does. It will. Console.log should be called in component. Yeah, we're supposed to call that. Yeah, okay. Hello. Maybe something more glamorous than hello. Do the cha-cha. If you know what I'm typing, it's called Evan Baxter's news scene. If you guys know what it is, basically this movie called Bruce Almighty. and this guy is ridiculed. I mean, the character is ridiculed, and there is this line I want to. And my Daniel, nope. I'm in the White House reception committee. We did the rib roast minister, and I do the cha cha like a Sicilian. Okay, I do the cha cha. I do the THA. Why not? I do the CHA hyphen CHA. I do the cha cha. And if you keep your eyes here, it prints everything I typed in here. So from hello space to I do space space, then I do space space, and then I do space THA space, then I do the cha cha. Right. So it logged everything. So this console logs literally everything. Very cool. This browser must have been built with I don't know, JavaScript or something. Oh god, so many yawns. Anyway, I think we're done with this test. 68% complete noise. Okay. Right. Okay, what does this say now? Most web developers at some point need to call an API endpoint to retrieve data. As if I understand what that means. If we are working with React, it's important to know where to perform this action. I'm going to read that again. You need to call an API endpoint. Now I know the full form of API. It's Application Programming Interface. Speaks between two different applications or programs or servers or software applications, really. Right, you need to call an API endpoint to retrieve data. Okay, I have no clue what that means. Let's find out. Let's Google it. API endpoint example. Thank you. Someone literally Googled this before. What is an API endpoint? Yay, this website called techtarget.com, and it's going to tell me what an API endpoint is. An API endpoint is a point at which an API, the code that allows two software programs to communicate with each other, connects with the software program. APIs work by sending requests for information from a web application or web server and receiving a response. In other words, API endpoints are the specific digital location where requests for information are sent by one program to retrieve the digital resource that exists there. Endpoints specify where APIs can access resources, address, and help guarantee the proper functioning of the incorporated software. And API's performance depends on its capacity to successfully communicate with API endpoints. How API endpoints work? No. The code used in placing a request for a specific statistics page on the NBA's website might read get, this is the get command, and this get the data of this website. In this example, get is the method. Sorry, it's not a function, it's a method. While the endpoint is the specific portion of the web. So this is the endpoint, the address of a page, HTML page, yeah. Address noted as stats all-star ballot predictor. If on the other hand an application is requesting information from Amazon's Dynamo service, its request may read https dynamo.us.west amazonaws.com. Okay. Consider the Instagram example further. If a Facebook developer wanted to request metrics on an Instagram business or creator account, they would use the Instagram Graph API to query the Instagram metrics endpoint. The request would look something like this: get method graph.facebook.com, that's whatever, and then insights, and then these must be the metric impressions, reach, and profile views, and period which day. Right, very cool. I kind of understand it now, but it's still a lot unclear. Anyway, continue. Now use the lifecycle method component did mount. Most web developers at some point need to call an API endpoint to retrieve data. I read that. The best practice with React is to place API calls or any calls to your server in the lifecycle method component did mount. Acha, that's the best practice with React. This method is called after a component is mounted to the DOM. Any calls to set state here will trigger a re-rendering of your component. Acha. When you call an API in this method and set your state with the data that the API returns, it will automatically trigger an update once you receive the data. There is a mock API call in component did mount. It sets state after 2.5 seconds to simulate calling a server. Simulate calling a server to retrieve data. Acha. This is a mock API call. This is an anonymous function inside set timeout. You can see that it takes two arguments. One is the arrow function and one is 2500. Right. Timeout when it reaches active users maybe. So this dot component did mount, this dot set state, active users. Oh. So this anonymous function is an argument. Interesting. And this, when the active users, I think this is an if, this isn't conditional really, this is conditional, isn't it? If the list of active users reaches this, then you set the timeout for 2500. I don't know. Let's read this again. Called after a component is mounted to the DOM. After it's mounted to the DOM. Which component? A component. Any calls to set state here will trigger a re-rendering of your component. Basically isko trigger kiya this function, then it will re-render the component itself. In our case, this is the stateful component which contains the entire HTML code, so it would refresh the entire page. Right. Here will trigger, when you call an API in this method, when you call an API in this method and set your state with the data that API returns, it will automatically trigger an update once you receive the data. I mean, a user when enters something and when you receive the data, it will refresh itself. This must be basic JavaScript. Right. There is a mock API call in component did mount. Yep, it set states. 2.5 seconds. So this is 2500 milliseconds then. 1 second is what? 1 second is how many milliseconds? 100, 1000, 2500. 2000 is 2 seconds and 500 is 0.5. Yeah, 2500. Okay, makes sense. So 2.5 seconds to simulate calling a server to retrieve data. This example requests the current total active users for a site. Yeah. In the render method, render the value of active users in H1 after the text active users. Watch what happens in the preview and feel free to change the timeout to see the different effects. I must. I got okay. Render the value of active users. It means this. This dot props. No, not props. State. Right, I don't see anything. Because it takes 2.5 seconds, obviously. What if I were to use this dot props? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nope. And now state. 1, 2, 3. Okay, 1, 2, 7, 1, 2, 7, 3. Pretty cool. If I were to do this 300, it would immediately appear 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Cool. So cool. Okay, nice. We are done with 70%, but okay. I'm going to read this again. So the moment it starts rendering, I mean mounting to the DOM is rendering. And this probably can be a function. This must be a function. I mean, yeah, going in the future, active users for analytics, we would want analytics, like real analytics, right? So we would want a list of an array that would list all the online profiles or the active users, and then we would write array.length maybe. I mean, I'm just going very simply here because I have no clue. Anyway, add event listeners. Apparently this thing is very taxing. Oh my god. I'm going to take another break. I'll get some coffee too. When I come back, we will continue with this event listeners. Until then, thank you for watching, and I will be back. Oh, we have 4 likes so far. Amazing. We have 29 views. Thank you so much, guys. Really, I appreciate it. Right, let us get back to where we were. So many yawns, so many things left to do. So add event listeners. So now the component did mount method is also the best place to attach any event listeners you need to add for specific functionality. React provides a synthetic event system which wraps the native event system present in browsers, which means this means that the synthetic event system behaves exactly the same regardless of the user's browser, even if the native events may behave differently between different browsers. Okay, you've already been using some of these synthetic event handlers such as onClick. Yes, React's synthetic event system is great to use for most interactions you'll manage on DOM elements. If you want to attach an event handler to the document or window objects, you have to do this directly. We'll see what this unfolds. You can see it has handle enter, handle key press, and then render. Basically, these are, I think, what they call event listeners. And this is the only thing that will render for the first time. This says this not state not message. So now, right now, the message is empty. If we click on enter, it says you pressed the enter key. If we event key code 13, right, as if I have no clue what that is. Key code 13, if we press the key that has key on the keyboard that has the key code 13, then it will call this dot handle enter, which would in turn do the same thing. Acha. Oh, acha. The handle key press event, handle enter. If the key code is this, then you call this function. You press the what button? You press the enter key. So 13, the key code 13 must be for the enter, right? So in here, if I press enter, something would appear. Right now, nothing is because I don't know why. Right. Attach an event listener in the component did mount method for key down events. As if I know what that means. I think they are talking about these. We have to call this function first. Only then will it call this function. So we have to call this function. But method for key down events and have these add in attach an event listener in the component did mount for key down events and have these events trigger the callback handle key press. You can use document.event add event listener, which takes the event in quotes. मुझे थोड़ा पढ़ना पड़ेगा वापस. You can use document.add event listener, which takes the event in quotes as the first argument and the callback as the second argument, as if I understand what you're saying. Okay, this is how they wrote this, right? So set timeout. So I think instead of set timeout, we have to write document.remove event listener. Add event listener. And inside add event listener, we're supposed to call this function maybe. I hope so. It says message state message. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, inside this we write document dot add event, right? listener, and inside this we call that function. Wait, no. You can use the which takes the event in quotes. Wait, now add an event listener in the method for key down events. And now these events trigger the callback handle key press, which takes the event in quotes as the first argument, the callback as the second argument. Do you mean this way? Do I write handle key press? And what do you write? Callback as the second argument. Okay. Then then नहीं पहले तो ये समझो ये okay नहीं करना है. Let's understand this. Attach an event listener in the component did mount method for key down events. Was this also for key down events? No, wait. Key down events. Key code handle enter. No. Why does it say key down events? I think they mean these key down events. And have these events trigger the callback handle key press. So you can use अभी ये करना है और उसके लिए हम ये use कर सकते हैं. You can use this which takes the event in quotes as the first argument and callback as the second argument. So add event listener का second argument एक callback है. Callback what? Which function? Is this what you're saying? Set timeout के अंदर जैसे ये कोई callback function is the first argument. Sorry, here. Do they mean a second argument as the callback function? Yeah, let's find out. What do we even write here? I wouldn't know what to write as the callback function. Maybe because I didn't read this code. Let's try to read this code again. It would return this not state dot message which is empty, right? And we have these values. Did mount. So after mounting, it's supposed to print this thing. How do we let it? So we have to change the value of message. Right now it's printing nothing. Interesting. Okay. So जब mount होगा, इनमें कैसे लिखा है? Set timeout this and then time, which is all a part of this function call, right? So component did mount के अंदर add event listener use करेंगे, which takes the event in quotes. Wait, not event. Oh, I think they mean this on click event. But we have to write on change, not this on click. ऐसे लिखते हैं. What do they mean? Attach an event handler to document. You have to do this directly. It says in quotes as the callback as the second argument. What do I write in the callback? I mean, what do you want me to run? Do you mean this handle key press? I think so. We're supposed to put that as the callback function then. Handle key press is not defined. Naturally so. Change code below this line, above this line. यहाँ पे कुछ edit नहीं करना है. So that means we're not supposed to edit anything. Yeah, you guys get it. Handle key press is not defined. And what do we write as callback? Trigger the callback handle key press, right? Method for key down events. Acha, are we supposed to write key down itself? Key down event in not jQuery, we write React. On key press. Not away, not on click then. On key press. Still says handle key press is not defined. Are you supposed to copy and paste this inside this? I do not get it. I'm going to take a hint. This challenge has you modifying two lifecycle methods, component did mount and component will mount. You use component did mount when you want to set something up. In your case, an event listener. You use component will mount when you need to clear that something, your event listener. You will add an event listener to the component did mount method that will listen to a key down event. Are you okay, right. Use document.add event listener. Document.add event listener. Event function optional use capture. Then remove this event. What is the event? On key press, right? Maybe handle key press this dot handle. Oh my god, yeah. Abe, click on. Right. This dot handle key press cannot read properties of undefined reading key code. Build error. वो component will mount में शायद होगा. Anyway, what if I write now on key press? Still no change. I see. Okay. Okay. Then remove this same event listener by passing in the same arguments into document.remove event listener. Same thing, but now instead of add event listener, we write remove event listener. We write the same thing, but instead of add, now we ask it to remove it. Cool. Now it still says cannot read properties of undefined reading key code. That means they're talking about this. They still can't figure that out. The will unmount method. Why can't you read it? It says event.keycode handle key press. So handle की प्रेस को जब हम कॉल करते तो वो आर्ग्यूमेंट में क्या लेता है? ऑन की प्रेस की प्रेस राइट. क्या बोल रहे हैं? माई कंपोनेंट शुड रेंडर ए डेवलपमेंट विच रैप्स इन h1 टैग. Basically we should be seeing something. We don't see anything. Key down listener should be attached to the document in component did mount. I think we're not supposed to run this. What if I press the enter key now? Right, there's no input, is there? Q, next second. Should be attached to the document in component did mount. Key down listener. This may be same code लिखना पड़ेगा ना. Right, there's nothing visible in the HTML file yet. Are we sure that we are supposed to write on key press? Maybe it's on click. Maybe. I mean, key press and on click are quite different things. They're extremely different things. And it's not visible still. What if I remove the quotes? Right. Can simply write on key press then. Still error. A key down listener should be attached to the document. So yeah, we know that this is the listener, and it said so we are only short on key down listeners. Do I write this dot what do we write? This dot handle enter, this dot handle key press. Whatever we're doing, we're supposed to write it here. Let's check. I have no clue what to write really. class my component this whatever, and we write key down. It's literally key down. It's literally key down. Come on. It's literally key down, dude. Bro, I can't see any text yet. और भी तकलीफ करी होगी हमने, की होगी. Document and event listener key down this handle key press. That's pretty, yeah. I don't think we made a mistake over there. तो यहाँ पे क्यों नहीं दिख रहा है? Is it supposed to be that way? What if I were to remove view? Missing semicolon. बाप रे. Right. Cannot read properties. Bind. हाँ नहीं, उसको bind भी कर रहा हूँ. Come on, bro. Okay, but I think we've passed the test. Why don't I see anything? I think it's not supposed to see anything yet. चलो तो करते ना. दिस को बाइंड करना पहले हटाओ. बाइंड भी नहीं करेंगे. क्यों बाइंड नहीं करेंगे? बाइंड तो करना है. कंपोनेंट विल अनमाउंट. इसको अनमाउंट नहीं करते. चलो. Right, as if that did something. Am I supposed to press enter first? Oh god. I'm supposed to press enter first. You press the enter key. Right. Handle key press event. The event is pressing the enter key. If I were to press maybe shift, maybe L, nothing would happen. But if I press the enter key, it would appear. So that happened. Okay. Done. Next. I'll be back, guys. हमने 3.5 घंटे ख़त्म कर लिया. मैं थोड़ा पानी वानी पी के आता हूँ. I know I've been taking long breaks, but from tomorrow nothing of the sort will happen. Hello guys, so that's it for this live video. I'll be back again in a couple of hours. I have to go out and have some, of course, dinner, and when I come back we will continue with this thing. So until then, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next live